What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Welcome, everybody, to another star-studded lineup to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. I'm joined by internet celebrity himself, Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Good. Well, something. Good. I don't know. How are you?
Good. The reason why I brought that up is we get these crazy emails every week, and one of them said, "How do you deal with Paul's celebrityhood?" And I said, I take it one day at a time.
Yeah. See, I'm not a celebrity.
Well, to some extent.
No.
Famous on the internet for complaining about things.
Sure.
I mean, that's what I'm known for.
I tried to explain that to my daughter recently. She was telling me that I complain too much, and I said, Kelly, I do this for a living. That's my job.
This is What the Tech for people just tuning in, first-time viewers. We don't discuss tech news, but sometimes we do. So deal with it. I get a lot of these emails now, Paul. It's like the more I bring up the email thing, I think I should start. The more I get them. It's like, You said you don't talk about tech news, but you spent that entire show talking about Windows 8 and talking about Microsoft announcements.
Sure.
So we're just going to skip over anything important. We're going to talk about, I don't know, security news from the 1980s.
Okay.
Last week, we concentrated most of the show on Windows Phone. And all the announcement that Microsoft had. Microsoft had a huge month in June with multiple announcements about their Windows Phone lineup, Windows RT, the Windows Surface, Microsoft Surface. So there was a lot of Microsoft news happening. But at the end of the month, it was Google I/O. And it's one of the hardest developer conferences to get into, right? I mean, everybody wants to go there for like the free stuff.
I know. They always give away stuff. You know you're going to walk away with something.
And we did not get a chance to talk about it because it happened later on in the week. So we were going to touch on some things. I don't want to go through the entire lineup because I thought most of it was nonsense.
No, most of it was nonsense. And
I got, we were talking about this on Tech News Weekly at the end of the week. And somebody in our chat goes, well, you guys are so critical about everything. All you do is complain about it. You don't see the positive in it. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's look at the positive. I think the Nexus 7 is a cool tablet. I think the Q is useless. And what does skydiving have to do with anything?
I've always had a side issue with Google because they are pointlessly irreverent.
Yeah.
They love the April Fool's gags. Which I just maybe it's a theological thing. I just have never kind of agreed with that stuff. As much as I like to goof around and have a good time and all that. I mean, don't get me wrong, but Google's inability to take itself seriously, I think, sends a weird message to people who might bet their businesses on them, Yeah. They just seem like they're trying too hard to be like college kids.
Well, see, that stuff doesn't bother me, but what does bother me is that it was actually a crappy I/O. In the sense of the Google Nexus 7 was the only positive thing that was announced. It's competing directly with 7-inch tablets and probably in their minds, probably Windows RT. But they announced this Google Q thing.
Yep. I
think it's useless.
Well,
it doesn't know what it wants to be.
I don't have one and I won't, right? Part of the reason is because I was already burned once by Google TV. And I'm a little confused.
Why they would do this.
What this is. This is like another take on Google TV, but not Google TV. Yeah. So, I don't know. I wish these guys would rein it in a little bit. I think that Android, Chrome OS, they have Google TV and Google Q. These things are all sort of the same thing, and
and that's the problem. I mean, isn't that the issue with this company altogether? They have this mentality where, well, if one doesn't work, it's all right. We'll still keep it alive and just put out something new and see how that does.
It also flies in the face, though, of the mantra of the new CEO, the co-founder Larry Page, who came in, and one of the first things he did was just start cutting very aggressively non-productive projects that they're working on. So here they are kind of ramping up with all this stuff again. So I don't mind there being a Google Q. I just think you do this or you do Google TV. You don't do both. And so
but
pick
what
one
is it trying to be?
And go from there.
It doesn't really have the features of Google TV. I think Google TV, and this is crazy to say, is far more advanced than this device when it comes to applications and add-ons and the interface. This really does not. It doesn't do anything.
I don't know what I watched the whole thing. I have no idea what this thing is. So it appears to be a living room / home based accessory for an Android phone. You know, it's bizarre to me. I have a feeling that, you know, and I just know about this from writing about Windows 8 for the book recently, and about Windows Phone 8, which also has NFC, where there's this notion of tap to share that's on these devices. No one ever uses it for anything. I think the way it's going to evolve is that we're going to use it to pay for things, and that what we're going to tap is going to be like a payment kiosk in a store, or in a subway, or wherever it is. And that makes sense. But I think a lot of people sit around and they think, well, you know, what are the cool ways we can tap to share? You know,
sure.
They envision people smacking their phones together, which is possible with certain apps today, or the thing they're talking about, where, you know, you've got your phone, you walk into someone's house, because everyone has one of these stupid devices for some reason, and you can tap it and you load your playlist onto it or whatever. And I'm sorry, like I'm not saying it doesn't work. It doesn't matter if it works. It's ridiculous. No, but I just think it's just so utterly pointless.
Yeah, see, and I kind of feel the same way. They spend more of that presentation talking about, you know, the sharing ability of this device than the actual device. It's a cool looking device, very expensive. You're talking
for what it is,
far more expensive than a Roku or an Apple TV or even the Google TV right now. But
sure,
this is the perfect example of what's wrong with Google.
Right, because this would never have gotten green lit at any company that was actually trying to make money.
At any company. And you know what? Google's the only one that's really capable of doing this, because they really don't care how much money they hemorrhage at this point.
Sure.
Because they have had many unsuccessful projects.
Google Wave. They can't have a shareholder revolt. There's not going to be an uprising of shareholders who are going to overthrow their executive staff. They've structured the company in such a way that this is effectively impossible. So they're just kind of this weird, goofy company that has billions and billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars that they could play with. I mean, that's really what it comes down to at this point. But if you look at over the last 4 years, the failures that this company has had,
sure,
Google Wave, Google Buzz, total fail, and multiple other projects that they've gotten. You know what they are? They're
the Toyota of the tech world, and what I mean by that is, Toyota has like these huge safety issues, and everyone still loves them. Everyone still thinks of Toyota as this beautiful, safe company, and the cars are great, you know. And no one really, it's almost like the bad things happen and people just ignore it, you know. And Google is this company where most of their stuff just doesn't work. It doesn't work well together. It's not safe. It's not secure. It's stealing information from you. And people are like, yeah, Google. Yeah, Google. Look, they have an irreverent drawing on their homepage today. Aren't they cute? Let's all write a story about that.
But it's almost like they put the wrong tires on a car, and then they instead of fixing the tire issue, they just build a new car.
Yeah, but did you see the CEO is like hang gliding or whatever?
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, and listen, I use Google every day. I have an Android phone. Sure. I appreciate many of the positive things that Google does, but there's a lot of things that they do wrong, and this will affect them in the long run if they keep putting out consumer-grade
I'm not going to suggest that Google does nothing positive.
No, listen, they've been able to saturate.
I'm also not going to dwell on that comment.
I think they're going with Android. I think they're going in the right direction, and I beat up on Android a lot because I kind of have this expectation that, well, maybe I want my phone to work. I don't know, that might sound crazy to many people.
Sure. Why do you have to be such a jerk about
I know, I do. And that's the problem. I think that's my problem.
Why can't you just accept it?
I had this discussion with somebody. I'm no longer, and this is the Google Experience phone, right? I can't make a phone call with this anymore. I have to use the Samsung Note, my other Google phone, to make phone calls. And if I want to use the internet on it, I have to use this phone because this one doesn't work. I mean, it's this game that I'm playing with phones.
Or as I call it, Android for the win.
Yeah. I think they're going with all the latest ice cream sandwich stuff. Did you see the news that they got 10% of the market?
With
ice cream sandwich.
Yeah.
9 months after the release of this.
Yeah.
By the way, now it doesn't even matter because the new version's out. Jelly Bean's out.
Yep.
So it took them 9 months to get 10% with their latest operating system.
Well, I will say this: they are updating their mobile OS at a very impressive clip. You're right that the device makers or the carriers or whoever is preventing this, they're not updating all the devices and all that kind of stuff. But there's an interesting model here where I think people just buy whatever the flagship phone is. There may be a disconnect between people like you and I who are in the industry and we're kind of up on this stuff, where we are always complaining about how they never provide the updates and everything. But this may not be an issue for normal people. I mean, normal people buy these phones. Clearly, it's the mainstream device, so this may not be an issue.
Well, clearly they're buying it because they have the market shares in their hands. But I think there's a lot of things that are wrong with this. I think the biggest problem that Android has is I don't necessarily think it's Google. I think it's the OEMs that are putting out the phone without the latest updates. I think that's the biggest problem that they face because it's open, so everybody's doing whatever they want. So you have some phones with gingerbread, you have some phones with ice cream sandwich, and now you're going to have some phones with jelly bean. I think that's the biggest problem that they face with this. But at Google I/O, they displayed their latest version, which is jelly bean, and it's running something called butter. So it's supposed to make the UI a lot smoother. And apparently, that was terrible, Did you hear the whole thing?
Groan-inducing butter jokes,
But did you hear the whole that was like a jab at Steve Jobs?
Oh yeah, it's just the whole thing there is just awful. One thing I didn't catch though was whether this jelly bean thing is that going to be on phones too?
Yes, it is.
And immediately, and non-Google phones. I mean,
they said
did they talk about that?
They said in mid-July, it's going to be an over-the-air update for Google Nexus. Samsung Galaxy Nexus phones and Galaxy Nexus S phones. Now, here's the problem with that. Okay, fine. You said who's getting it, but what carriers are going to get it, and when are the carriers going to deploy this? I don't think Verizon is deploying this anytime soon.
Yep.
So possibly the unlocked version of the phones are going to get it. I haven't really heard anything from Verizon about the release date. Nobody's really releasing any kind of release date on when this update's going to happen. But those are the two phones that are announced currently that will have Jelly Bean.
Wait, I'm sorry. Samsung Galaxy
Nexus
S3.
No. Samsung Galaxy Nexus.
Oh, Nexus.
And the Nexus S.
And the Nexus. What's the Nexus S?
It was the one before
the previous Nexus. The previous Google phone.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the two phones getting it right now, other than except for the
tablet.
The tablet. Now I ordered the tablet.
I did too.
$199.
Yep.
I can't, I justified it because it's so cheap compared to everything else on the market, and I really want to know what a pure Google experience on a tablet's going to be like.
I think this is the first step. I think there's going to be a 10-inch tablet too that's more of a computing device, and if they're smart, they'll combine it with some kind of a nice keyboard clip-on base, docking station thing.
But see, here's the thing: $199 for this, $249 possibly for the 10-inch when they release that in a couple months.
Probably more than that, but $399.
You think it'll be $399?
$349, somewhere in there. It's got to be less than an iPad, right, for it to make sense. It seems like they're subsidizing this one a little bit because my understanding is that Asus was going to release a tablet very much like this, and that the starting price was going to be $249, and that Google was able to sell it for $199. And it makes me wonder if they didn't, take a small loss on it just to get it out there at the right price.
Well, there was a very interesting story. Google was kind of showing off that they were able to put this together in 4 months.
Yeah.
We created this. The tablet already existed.
Yeah.
It existed since January. They displayed this at CES.
Right.
But I'm going down the list here of the features. 7 inches, Paul. I'm not a big fan of the 7-inch tablets.
See, I actually am. Now, but that says something about the way I use tablets, right? I don't use tablets as like an email, web browsing, get work done kind of thing. I use it for consumption purposes only. I read ebooks on them. I watch movies when I'm on a trip. It's awesome being able to travel with something that small. Currently, I'm using an Amazon Kindle Fire, which is obviously the most direct competitor to this. Very similarly sized, a little thicker, a little heavier, but same screen. It's not as high resolution. There's obviously some spec differences, but very, very similar. The $199 price point is the 8 gigs of storage. It's very close. This Google thing, I think, comes out pretty well ahead. I mean, it's got better battery life, better processor, higher screen resolution. It is a little thinner, a little lighter.
I mean, the specs look great on it.
But this device is to Google, right, as the Kindle Fire is to Amazon, as really the iPad or an iPod Touch is to Apple, in that it is simply a consumption device for that company's ecosystem.
Sure, yeah.
That's all it is.
And that's how they're going to subsidize these pricing, really.
Yeah,
on all these devices.
I think they can justify it. It's fine. Yeah. I mean, and I have to say, having used the Kindle Fire for a while, I like it. I think there's an integrated experience thing that you get that's good. I think this is I didn't add this to the notes or anything, and I don't want to get off on a broad side topic, but I mean, I think these devices are a very interesting way of kind of letting go of the compulsive disorder that a lot of us have in the tech industry, where we have to micromanage everything, where it's very interesting when you just kind of let go of it. If you let go of the notion, well, this thing doesn't have enough internal storage and you can't even expand the storage. And well, what if I wanted to bring a hard drive that had a bunch of extra movies on it? Or what if I wanted my entire movie collection? And what am I going to do when I'm off, off of connectivity? I'm on an airplane, and it's like you can get kind of wound up in that stuff. But, these devices work well for what they are. It's not a replacement for a computer. I would hope that,
and I think that's the problem that many people face, especially a lot of people writing about this device. They're talking about how they're talking about little specs here and there. They go, well, the front-facing camera is only 1.2 megapixel, but how often are you using it?
I've never used a front-facing camera on any device except by mistake or to review it.
See, here's also the other issue with this. I found it fascinating that they don't have a rear-facing camera.
Yeah, it's just
weird, a little weird. And the front-facing camera is only a 1.2 megapixel camera, but they were showing off how this is going to be a great device to do Google Hangouts with.
Yep.
But you're putting a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera on the device.
If you're doing a Google Hangout, which I'm not going to promise I will never do, but that sounds horrible to me. But I suppose the point of that is you have multiple people, right, and little windows on their computer. Yeah. So maybe the quality of your video is not really that huge of a deal. I don't know. You can kind of quibble about this stuff, but I just think it's like we got to let go. Just let go. Yeah. This is fine for what it is. We've talked about a lot of this stuff. How computers go to SSD and now you have a lot less storage, and like how do you kind of deal with that when you've been so compulsive about always bringing everything with you on a trip or whatever. These devices are kind of a logical extension of that. The iPad taught us that a lot of people don't need a computer to do the stuff they need to do every day. Update Facebook, answer email, browse the web, read the New York Times, whatever it is. They may not need an iPad either. They may need, a lot of people, a very big number of people may simply need something this small and inexpensive. And $200 is a lot less money than $630 or whatever the average selling price of an iPad is, and it's certainly a lot less size and weight and stuff to carry around. So I'm eager to see it. I mean, to me, this is you compare this to the Fire. That's the only thing you compare this to.
Yeah. So I guess that's what's really competing with. They profile the magazine feature of it, so they're really competing with the Fire. But one thing that they're really profiling is the graphics on this thing and how it's going to become a gaming device.
Yeah. No more than any other Android devices, right? I mean, Android devices there are a lot of games, but they're limited by that form factor, in the sense that you're never going to do a gritty Call of Duty style shooter that's going to be any good because it's just too hard to control that guy on screen with using just the screen, just touching.
I don't know. See, here's the thing. I've never seen any other Android device profile the graphics as much as this one, even to the point that they gave some crazy number, like it has 12 cores, just to say how great it is.
I think that's just a factor of the chipset they got. I think it's Tegra 3, right? I think they just got Tegra. So, Microsoft showed off a Tegra 3 based ARM tablet at Build last September, pre-release version. So what? I mean, I think it's just common. It's just the hardware. There are going to be Tegra 3 based WinRT tablets this fall.
So where does Google go from here? Where do they take this device? What's the next move for them? Okay, fine. We finally have the Google Experience tablet out there. Now
they
what?
round it out. They round it out. You know, they need it. I think they do need a 10-inch tablet because there are those people who are going to want that stuff. And then I think the big thing they got to do is combine Android with Chrome OS and make that the basis of whatever this hybrid tablet thing is that will replace these Chromebooks, because that stuff is just pointless.
What, the Chrome? Yeah, I mean that was another thing they featured, and I don't know why they're putting it out there.
I have no idea why either. Maybe they just don't. I don't know. Microsoft for many years had two OSs that they were selling, and you do that when you have to, I guess. But I just see that stuff consolidating at some point. It doesn't make any sense to have those things. Android can do everything that Chrome OS can do. They just don't. Chrome is an application that runs on Android. That's all it is, and I think that's where it's going to go.
Boy Genius Reports is reporting that Google's planning a 10-inch version. Let's see here. When are we going to get this? They're already prepping it.
Yeah, so maybe for the fall.
I mean, listen, I would welcome a 10-inch over this one. I don't like the 7-inch tablets. I kind of like the size of the iPad.
Yeah.
I feel like the 7 inches is a little too small for just whatever I'm doing.
But again, it depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
And it depends on why you want this thing. I mean, again, like I said, I fully expect going forward for myself, I'm going to have these Windows 8 computers, and they'll be computers. They'll be Ultrabooks, whatever it is. For the same reason that I don't want to play a movie on my phone, because the battery of that device is critical to me. And when I arrive at whatever place I'm going to, I want to have that battery life for the phone. The battery life in the laptop may be critical too, or it's just inconvenient to open that kind of a screen on the plane I'm on or whatever. And so, carrying a 7-inch device that weighs next to nothing is wonderful. And I think I made the observation recently that when I travel with an Ultrabook and the Amazon Kindle Fire, those two devices together weigh less than the previous laptop I used.
Yeah, which is, insane.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really evolved these devices.
Yeah.
The Surface is coming out in a couple months. So where does this is a weird situation we're in, because now we have the Surface, which is running Windows RT. We have the new version of Google's Android out on the Nexus 7 and the iPad.
But again, these things, it's funny because they're similar, but they're not really directly competing. Not really, right?
But does the consumer see that? See that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is the consumer going to
they will see it if they see them in a store next to each other, because first of all, the Nexus 7 and the iPad are not the same size. So I mean, there's going to be an obvious. People are going to go left or right based on just that one thing. That'll be the first thing. And I think when you see an iPad next to a Windows RT tablet like the Surface, where there's a keyboard, to me, I think the first off the cuff observation you're going to make is that the RT one looks like a professional device, whereas the iPad doesn't.
And it's a lot prettier. I mean, the UI is prettier on the Windows RT.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we don't know how Apple will change that in the future. We also don't know if maybe they come out with a nice keyboard dock for the fall, or they could change things up. I mean, they're not set on any schedule. There's no reason the iPad couldn't be updated to better adapt to the market changing with Windows RT.
Over the last couple of weeks, have we gotten a pricing idea for Windows RT devices, the Surface?
No. There were some rumors. I thought it was I want to say it was $499 for the RT version, the entry level one, with the flat keyboard, and then I think the Ultrabook version might have been, or the what do you call it, the Intel version was maybe $799.
Yeah, I mean, psychologically, this kind of puts Windows in a situation like, well, look, we're at the same level as the iPad. I mean, we're a premium device. You're getting a better experience. If you want a lower end experience, you could go to Android. It's kind of separating itself from Android.
I guess so. I mean, both of the it's not really about the device. You're buying into this ecosystem thing, right? I think the bigger part of the Google announcement was around the fact that they have this thing called Play now that is roughly analogous to iTunes, App Store, iBooks, and all that stuff together. Roughly analogous to a lot of the stuff that Amazon offers. And I think Google didn't like how Amazon was an Android device, but not really an Android device, not part of the ecosystem necessarily, has their own ecosystem. So they showed off, the magazine support, which looks just like magazines are in the Kindle. If you run the, the Kindle app on the iPad, for example, magazines and periodicals look just like this. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
You can run it, it looks like the magazine. You can flip the pages, or you can do it in a nice text view, which I prefer. whatever. So, but they filled it out. I didn't really realize this because I don't spend a lot of time in Google Play, but I guess the way it worked before was that they only offered movie rentals, and now they're offering movie purchases as well as TV purchases, right? Which they didn't have TV before at all. And so I think that rounds out their ecosystem, and they're roughly on par. I think all of those companies, and Microsoft too, although Microsoft lacks the e-reading stuff, which you can add, through Kindle or Barnes and Noble.
Have they come out and said, we're looking to get involved in this?
Microsoft?
Yeah.
They have a partnership with Barnes and Noble, or the company, the part of Barnes and Noble that will become Nook, to work on Windows, what we suspect are Windows RT based versions of the Nook tablet. So I think the Nook is the Microsoft answer to that. Although, again, the beauty of Windows is that you can run these other things.
So wait, the Nook is now gonna the long-term goal. They're gonna abandon Android and jump to RT.
Yeah, I mean, there'll probably be different Nook devices, just like there are different Kindle devices today, and different Nook devices today. So there'll be the low-end e-readers that are based on whatever, but then they'll have a high-end tablet that today is an Android-based something, I think, and that in the future will be a Windows RT-based.
Yeah, that's actually something that I would want to get.
Sure.
It's the market is really spread out. A couple months ago, they were discussing, well, is it down to only 2 companies? Does Microsoft have a chance to survive in the tablet market? Even before, even when we knew that a device like this is going to come out, like the Surface, and now I think they've validated that. Hey, listen, we will become the premium tablet on the market. Microsoft, and to me, it's far more attractive to go to a Microsoft tablet where you're going to have some sort of backwards compatibility with your other devices. It's kind of the environment that you know of compared to going to the iPhone or going to the iPad.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, I think I've said before, we need to kind of wait a year to see how this falls out, because the simple truth is that I happen to think the Windows platform, the RT platform, is superior to the iPad stuff, but A, no one cares what I think, and B, regardless of my opinion on this, it's also an immature version 1 product, whereas the iPad is on V3 now and heading to V4. So they also have a lot of apps, right? Hundreds of thousands of apps, and the Windows Store has like hundreds of apps, and maybe we'll have thousands when it launches. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be a lot like Windows Phone rather, where we're going to see people complaining that, it's nice and everything, but they don't have a lot of apps yet. And unfortunately, Microsoft is going to have to get into this game where they, apps are going to get counted and people are going to make those comparisons. And it's a viable argument to make, if you're a consumer and you don't know a lot about technology, or that you're making this big platform bet, someone might say to you, look, these guys have 200,000 apps and these guys have 200. I mean, think about it. Which one are you going to go with?
What are they doing right now? I know they're really trying to get developers to develop the Metro-style apps, but what are they doing to kind of push that? Because you even said you were kind of disappointed that with this last release of the beta, the apps weren't there.
I expected when I guess it was the consumer preview, when they opened the store up, that thing shipped with, I don't remember the number, 118 apps, whatever it was at the time. And I thought, well, okay, so every Tuesday will come out and there'll be more apps, or maybe they release more apps over time. And they actually, the first week or two, they released some apps. And I thought, here we go. They're going to do this. This is how it rolls out. Just today, coincidentally, they released a post where they explained that in addition to the 3 public milestones of Windows 8, developer, consumer, and release preview, they also seeded close developers, close partners, with 5 other pre-release versions, and that those developers targeted those pre-release updates with apps and so forth. And so, release preview came and there were some apps. RTM is going to come and there'll be more apps, but then the floodgates open and we'll see. And so we don't know, but we just don't know. I mean, is it going to be 300? Is it going to be 3,000? Are they going to go for quality over quantity? And if they do that, are they just saying that because they really just don't have the number of apps they expected? I mean, I have no idea.
I'm actually surprised they haven't come out to say, that's going to be their thing. They're going to go for quality over quantity to kind of combat the flood of apps on the other 2 platforms.
Yeah, That's a making lemonade statement. If that's what they say, then you can mark my words. They did not get the number of apps that they wanted or expected, and that's your only recourse at that point to say, well, we only wanted the quality apps.
They've really become aggressive. I mean, Microsoft, we talk about this, almost every week, but they're not the company of 10 years ago. And a lot's changed. And one of the big stories this week was that they announced that for a short period of time, I guess like a promotional time period, Windows 8, to upgrade to Windows 8, it's only going to cost you $40.
Yep. So I want to get out of the way a couple of the quick observations that various doofuses will have about that.
Okay.
One, I wrote an editorial and then went to Twitter and had this exact exchange with someone after the fact. But I predicted that anytime you announce something like this, you're going to get that guy in the back of the room going, excuse me. Yeah, $40 sounds great, but that's twice as much as Apple's going to charge for, OS 10 Mountain Lion. I mean, that's twice the cost. And it's like, yeah, except that your Mac was also 75% more expensive than my PC, and that by paying that kind of a cost for that machine, you are in fact subsidizing the development of OS 10. And Apple arguably should give you that update for free. And so I'm glad that you saved $20, but I saved $800 up front when I bought the computer. So I'm not really sure how those two things equate. So we'll get that one out of the way. And the other thing I just wanted to point out, it's really weird how people react to numbers like this, because I think this is an unbelievably good deal. This is such a good deal that I'm tempted to go and buy like 5 copies of Windows 8 at this price, so that down the road I can just apply these upgrades to different computers that I have around the house or whatever. I think it's a tremendous, tremendous deal. But it's interesting because some people still react to it. They're like, I wouldn't buy Windows 8 at any price, as if it was some horrible disease.
Well, also, someone in our chat pointed out that Mountain Lion is not a significant upgrade, while Windows 8 is.
Yep, sure. I mean, I could beat on Apple all day if you want me to, but I was just trying to get the obvious.
Okay, you're just being nice. No, $40. That's a phenomenal deal.
Here's the thing. This is what you got to remember is, 3 years ago when Windows 7 came out, they had this thing called the Windows 7 the Windows 7 Family Pack. It was 3 upgrade versions of Windows 7 Home Premium. It cost $150. The tech world reacted like it was the best deal in the history of mankind. Yeah, right? That deal, which everyone loved so much, they loved it so much they brought it back. Remember that a year and a half later they had the deal for temporarily yet again. Those copies of Windows 7 are $10 more per copy than the Windows 8 upgrade deal we're getting now. They're for a lower end version of Windows, and you don't have to buy 3 at one time. You can buy them one at a time. So if you only need 1 or 2, you can buy 1 or 2.
They also have that student discount where if you're in school, you get Windows for like $29.
Yeah. But the point here, though, is just that this is an incredible deal. It's an incredible deal. So they have a deal in place. If you buy a new computer now, you get Windows 8 Pro for $15. If you just have computers and you want to get Windows 8, you get it for $40. That's crazy. It's a really good deal.
Well, this, people have been talking about this for a long time. Well, Apple, releases their operating systems at such a low cost. Why doesn't Microsoft do this? And now they're doing it. They listened to what people wanted. They wanted a lower end upgrade, lower cost upgrade. Yeah. And now they're doing it. But they're doing it from
Apple's decision, by the way, was guided by what happens on the mobile side. And on the mobile side, they give away those updates for free.
For free, yeah.
And what they found is that when you do that, everyone upgrades. And so, Apple can provide these figures. In fact, I think they did it at WWDC where they said, X number of months after released iOS 5, 79% or 95% or whatever the number was of our users are on our latest version. And that's, it's very important because it helps you drive the other products that rely on that, like iCloud and, the things that rely on you having the very latest version of the software. And so on the Mac side, of course, they can't really give it away for free, but by making it really cheap, more and more people will get that software. Let's say, screw it. Well, it's just, I can do it electronically. It's a simple upgrade. Smart, and Windows 8, I mean, it's funny because the tools that Microsoft provides are so much more sophisticated than what Apple has for upgrading you. All the different ways it can happen. You can create media or not create media. You do it, you do it over the air. It's amazing. And then the upgrade you get, like you said, it's like a brand new computer. It's completely different, right? I mean, it's amazing how different it is. Whereas you could upgrade to mountain lion and be like, wow, like there's like new desktop wallpaper, sort of. It's sort of the same, but it's like more purple or something.
Notifications.
Like, yeah, like neat.
Well, there's multiple things that come into play. You even, if you consider piracy and what this possibly could do to piracy, for $40, I think it could, someone that was going to pirate the software could justify buying it.
Yeah, there you go. And there's a very different thing. Upgrading a very small set of computer types, a very small audience, relatively speaking, tens of millions of people, versus the billion people running Windows 7 or Windows Vista or Windows XP. This will work on all of those. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. So this is a fairly monumental thing. I mean, it's the type of thing, I can be sort of jaded and critical when it comes to the Microsoft stuff, certainly when they deserve it. But I look at something like this and I think, this is, you have to be pretty sour to look at this and come away with anything negative. This is an incredible deal. It's just an incredible, incredible deal. And the more you know about how they deliver this kind of thing, honestly, the more impressive it gets.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if there's going to be a flood like we had with Windows 95. Could this potentially be another Windows 95 situation where people are just dying to get it?
Yeah, the problem is, for whatever it's worth, I do think there will be a flood. It's not going to generate the same 11 o'clock news stories because it's not going to involve people standing in line anymore, because now you can do this stuff electronically. No one will even know what's happening. So it will be up to Microsoft to release sales figures. But honestly, it's inconceivable that within a week or 2 weeks, there'll be more people running Windows 8 after this thing is released on their existing computers than there are Mac users in the entire world, all versions combined. There's no doubt about it. And so you can talk about how, blah, 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 it's $20 on the Mac side. Who cares? That's a tiny market.
Well, they're also trying to attract everybody to go over, and at $40, this is their way of, the people that were a little hesitant on going over, they could go and be like, $40, I can install it.
The other thing I just point out to people, if there are Windows 7 diehards in the audience and you're not really sure that you want it. Aside from the obvious stuff, you can do things like dual boot and, whatever. But one of the things I've done in all the testing I'm doing for the book is, you have a Windows 7 computer, you do a system backup. It's one of the features of the OS. You upgrade to Windows 8. The system backup tools from Windows 7 are actually still in there. You can use that and restore your computer back to Windows 7 if it doesn't work out. It actually works fine. You can do it from the repair disk that you can create optionally when you do the system backup, or you can actually just trigger it from Windows 8 and go right back to Windows 7. It works really well. So there's all these technologies in place to get you where you want to go. And it makes it easier if you're not sure. You can test it and see. And if it doesn't work out, you can use it somewhere else.
Has there been any more news from the OEMs on last week we were talking about how the OEMs were a little upset over this whole thing. Has there been anything more coming out?
Right?
Supposedly
we don't
upset,
actually know that anyone's upset about this. I think there's an inclination, again, there's like the real world and then there's us. And I think in our little world, like, we like controversy. We like there to be drama, I don't know that there is any drama around this. This may be one of those wag the dog type things where tech bloggers can't stop writing. Well, you got to think the HP and Dell are really pissed off about this. You imagine how, God, they're mad. Are they? Does it matter? Has anything changed? I don't.
Well, I'm curious to see what HP and Dell and Samsung and all these guys are going to start putting out, because the Surface is a nice device. It looks great. Nice, I'm sure it's going to run great. So what are they going to put out that's going to compete with this? And what's the lowest that we'll see a Windows RT tablet be priced at?
Right.
They have to. They're paying to use it, so they're paying. I think it's like $75 to. Well,
we have the baselines now, right? So we know that Windows RT and Windows 8 as well. The smallest screen that you can make for those devices is 7 inches, right? Same exact size as a Kindle Fire or a Nexus 7. So we know that those devices cost $200. So a Windows RT device with a 7-inch screen has to cost $200, or within shouting range of $200. Otherwise, it's pointless, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of device, I guess you could make the argument it's largely a consumption device. But you know what? It's a computer too, so you could dock it. You could plug it into all your screens and do all that kind of stuff. All that stuff works. So
people were buying those 7-inch tablets. So
yeah, you never know.
You never know. Yeah, it might become a big thing. People may want this.
Yeah, and we know from the iPad that on a 10-inch screen, and the Surface is 11.6 inches, I believe. But let's just say a 10-inch screen. The baseline is $500. I think it should be lower than that, by the way. I think 400 is maybe more realistic. I'm not sure. Actually, maybe I don't know. Are there 10-inch tablets from Samsung or whatever that are?
What's driving the price up? Is it the fact that they need to cram this large battery in here? Is it the flash storage? What's driving the prices of these devices so high? Yeah.
I think it's all of that, but it's also, I think in Apple's case, Apple always goes after the premium pricing model on their hardware. So I think the thing that amazed me most about the iPad pricing wasn't that Apple priced it that way. In fact, before the iPad came out, I expected it to be even more expensive. But rather that within the first year that the original iPad was out, we finally started seeing these Android competitors, and they weren't less expensive. That really blew my mind, And I don't know if it was because Apple drove up the component prices for everyone else by, taking most of the stuff that was in the market, or I don't know how it happened, but I think that the $500 price point at that entry-level iPad thing is kind of artificial and needs to go down. I've always felt that, and I think it will, of course. And so maybe the baseline price for a 10-inch tablet is really $400.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is that the tablet market has not been validated yet. I don't think there really is a tablet market. I think it's an iPad market, and this is really the first serious competitor in this market. When you look at
it as something that's 10 inches and higher.
Yeah, 10. I'm not talking. Yeah, I mean the Kindle Fire is pretty successful because of the size. But if we're comparing, I'm not going to compare the Android, Nexus 7 to the Surface. I don't think that's a fair comparison. You can't. It's not the same thing.
It's like comparing an Etch-a-Sketch,
Yeah, but here's the fascinating thing. I mean, the lines have been drawn. The lines in the sand have been drawn. There's multiple classes of tablets. When we first think of a tablet, we were thinking of, the iPad. I'm talking about modern times. So I'm not going to go into the convertible tablets and the Windows 7 tablets. I'm saying the tablet that we know. The iPad is the standard, and it's $499. Nobody complains that it's too much money, but it's $499. That's what it is. Android on the other side.
I just want to throw out, the thing about the iPad is it's not really $499, right? I mean, it starts at $499.
Starts at $499.
Nobody buys an iPad and walks out of a store with a $499 iPad.
No, you add tax, you get a couple apps.
No. You have to buy a case.
Okay, yeah.
That is a wicked expensive luxury item
to scratch up.
You gotta buy. You just bought a brand new white iPad and you're not going to protect that little babe? Of course you are.
There it is.
And so those things are what, $40, $80 if you get a leather one, whatever.
I got this guy.
Okay, but you see, I mean, the point is everyone buys. You have to buy something. Everyone will buy one of those things.
Okay, so let's add anywhere from $20 to $40.
Right. And the thing is, if we're going to spend that much money, don't you kind of want to get? Maybe you should go for the 3G one or the 4G, whatever they have now. Maybe you should. Let's just go for 32 gig and then get some cellular data on there, and pay monthly for that too, by the way. And then pretty soon it's laptop territory. You're spending, and then you get the goons who realize they kind of want to do type on it. So you buy the $100 keyboard, maybe you buy the keyboard dock, or you buy a dock and a keyboard, and you got to buy a bag for it because now you want to carry the thing around. And it's like after this thing is all said and done, the $500
$4,000, Paul. $4,000.
The iPad is a lie. That's what I'm saying.
Well, okay. So let's say $499 to whatever. Yeah. But now you have a different class. You have three different classes right now. You have the I guess the Kindle Fire type devices. You have everything else that Android is doing, and you have the iPad. And now that's shifting because you have the iPad and you have the Surface on one side. Yep. And you have that Kindle Fire and more closer to ebooks. The ebook has evolved into what the 7-inch tablet's going to be.
Yeah. I think the iPad and the WinRT are in fact going to just compete with each other. And the reason is the iPad is really like a tweener device. It's a consumption device, but people use it to do the kind of semi-productivity stuff that most people just need to do. Email, Facebook, web browsing, that kind of stuff. And so, there are people, they can carry this thing around and it works. The WinRT tablet is going to be like that. I think it's going to be for people who I need a Windows computer. I need Word and Excel and whatever, and Outlook for whatever reason. But I also want to do the iPad type stuff, and maybe I want to watch movies on a trip, whatever. And so those two devices to me are in fact very comparable, right? And I would make the argument that when RT has certain advantages of the iPad, it's very clear that the iPad has certain advantages, of course, over WinRT as well, right? Around app count and the ecosystem and all that kind of stuff. So, they're comparable, I think is the way to say it.
Listen, I bought a $500 Bejeweled machine because I played Bejeweled all weekend on this thing.
Yeah. By the way, I don't want to say you sicken me because that's a little strong, but it's.
I was playing that and I'm like, and I turned to my wife. I'm like, Paul would be really disappointed in me. He's like, why don't you tweet him? I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do. And I played Bejeweled and Mega Man X on my $500 tablet.
I did play a game on my phone today that was pretty embarrassing. It's called Fling. Actually, it's pretty cute. I don't play games. I don't do that kind of stuff a lot. I just don't really.
Listen, I think these devices have become all-in-one devices, and I'm curious to see how Microsoft is going to do that with them having that Xbox market. It's almost a given that they have to be dominant in the portable gaming market with these devices. I think they can be.
I think they're going to be a player. I don't see them being dominant. They're making some changes in Windows Phone 8, and they've got the WinRT and 8 stuff, of course. They're going to have this kind of it's kind of hard to explain, but there's a question out now. How hard will it be to take an app and have it run on WinRT, have it run on Windows 8, have it run on Windows Phone 8? And actually, it's probably not going to be too hard, but you're going to have to kind of custom tailor those things across those experiences. And then people say, well, if that's the case, why not just allow Windows Phone apps to run on Windows 8 or Windows RT? The platforms are so similar. What if you could just run the apps right on the thing? And it's like, I don't see that happening. But the one thing that you can do, according to the way I understand it, is that you could write a native code game using DirectX, Direct 3D, and all that stuff that will run across all of those platforms without really having to compile those things separately. Yeah. It's the same basic game. An HD Windows Phone device is going to be 1280 by 720 or 1280 by 768. Windows tablets, you're pretty much going to write that thing to 1366 by 768. And the only thing you really have to deal with is the resolution changes. And a lot of that stuff is fairly automatic. So it's going to be really possible, for now people to write those games that will run across those platforms. And I think that's going to be a big deal for the Xbox Live games. That you're going to be able to do that kind of thing. And so I don't see them being dominant, but I do see it being easier. I would say that the Xbox Live games that are available today on Windows Phone are actually pretty good. And they apparently were written with some great difficulty because they don't have that native code stuff. But now you're going to be able to take advantage of more sophisticated tools and the game runtime engines and all that stuff. So I think it's going to be a big deal.
I'm just going down the list here I had a link. Somebody sent me a link that went back to Microsoft and some of their plans with the gaming platform. I can't find it now. I kind of lost the link. That sucks. It was
gaming platform on
how they're gonna work with gaming when it comes to the tablet and Xbox and how that's gonna go over.
I think it's gonna go over big, but the thing to remember is the world has already moved on. So you've got the Xbox brand, which is very well regarded, but in the world of these devices and PCs and so forth, the market's only going to be so big. But it's going to be easier now to do the porting. So, for example, if you're Rovio, the company that makes Angry Birds, porting that game that you might have made for the iOS first to Android is relatively straightforward. Porting to Windows is now going to be a lot easier because they're using native codes, C and C++, but it's also, there are nuances to it too, right? The other platforms use OpenGL by and large for the gaming stuff. Microsoft has Direct 3D or DirectX, and so I'm sure there are differences there. But these companies, a lot of the games are written on these game platforms. The game, what do they call them? Runtimes or whatever. Those things are all being ported now to the Windows side. So I think porting games back and forth is going to be easier than it ever was too.
Hey, I actually had a question for you, and we could touch on it briefly. What's the deal with this new keyboard?
Which one?
The curved
the
keyboard?
Windows Phone one?
Yeah.
I actually don't know anything about that. I'm not even sure if that's real.
Okay, okay.
This is the thing that swipes up from one side. It's
like at an angle.
A way to handle typing on one hand, I guess, for larger screen devices.
I guess, but you're going back to the old way of typing where you got to hit 3 or 4 times before you find the letter.
So people probably don't remember this, but Microsoft briefly had a mobile platform called what was it called? Ultramobile PC.
Yes.
Origami. And nobody bought them. I actually have one. I can see one right. I can see one from where I'm sitting, but it didn't go very well. But it had if you picture holding a tablet where you have your hands on either side of the device, these were very small tablets. In fact, probably 6 or 7 inch tablets, come to think of it. Some of them had hardware keyboards, so it would be like a split BlackBerry keyboard where half the keyboard was on one side of the tablet and the other half was on the other, which is
and
a
there
little
was
odd,
like a trackpad on the bottom.
Yeah, but they had a software keyboard that would be 2 half circles that would come in from the corners. So again, you think about how you hold the device, your hands are in the corners, and it gives you this way to hit those keys without moving your hand around. And I looking at the supposed photo of that thing, I take it to be a one-handed version of that. An answer to the age-old problem, how do you type effectively on a small device with a small screen when you're holding it with only one hand, so most of us learn to peck,
I guess, you know what's fascinating about the keyboards? I still think that Android has the worst one.
Really?
It's just awful, the experience on the keyboard.
Do you think it matters, though? I mean, don't you just kind of get used to it? I mean,
yeah, my wife is used to all the typos that I do, and the autocorrect is awful. Like I wrote to her, I'm like, hey, pick up milk on the way home, and it was, do you want to go to the movies tomorrow?
Nice.
No, literally, that's exactly what it
kills me, because I'll often type in a word that's just kind of a weird word, and it's because maybe because I work in tech and I use weird words or whatever it is, but it will autocorrect it to some normal word, and then you look at the sentence and you're like, what the heck? If you're not paying attention, it does this kind of weird thing, but. I don't know. The Kindle Fire has a terrible on-screen keyboard. But the mistakes that you make with it are very predictable, because it's always the same kind of mistake. You mean to go back and you hit the L key or whatever the thing is over there in the corner.
Yeah, the iPhone. I think, in my opinion, the iPhone has the best one so far.
I think you just get used to what you use. So I use Windows Phone. I actually have always thought the on-screen keyboard is excellent. I use it. I'm used to it. It works well for me. But it's not fair for me to say it's better than the one on the iPhone. I don't use an iPhone. But obviously, in the world of on-screen keyboards for phones, Apple's probably been around longer than anyone else. So I'm sure theirs is pretty damn good.
Yeah. Time to do our Audible picks of the week, Paul. We didn't do one last week.
I know. This is the leftover one from last week.
This is a leftover, but a good one. We didn't go into it. What's your pick this week?
Yeah, I mean, before we skipped a week, I was kind of going through some of the sci-fi classics, and this particular book, which is Logan's Run, most people probably know it from the movie, rather, with Michael York, right? And then it was a very short-lived TV series. It's one of a series of books that it's interesting. It's really the only good thing the guy ever did, in my opinion. And it sort of sits where books like Ender's Game and also the original Planet of the Apes, the Pierre Boulle book, which is, by the way, excellent as well, and also on Audible, sit, which is, dystopian future, and and I've always been really impressed by those kind of post-apocalyptic views of the world and how things have changed. But when you think about classic sci-fi in the vein of Asimov with Foundation and Robots, or Jerry Pournelle and Larry Niven, I think I recommended Ringworld recently, and his short stories are all excellent. I mean, Logan's Run is Ender's Game, same thing. It's just in that category, and it's just an absolutely excellent sci-fi story, and I believe is brand new to Audible from within maybe 2 weeks ago. It was never
last
on
week.
Audible. Yeah, it's very, very recent, a very, very recent edition. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's so new to Audible that I think I might have actually taken the book out from the library or something when I was a kid. I don't think I ever actually owned the book, so. I will be redoing this one actually on Audible as well, simply because it's just new, and I'm just excited.
I actually have it on VHS sitting somewhere in my house.
Oh, the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
The movie's great. I mean, it's too long ago now for me to tell you how or if it's different from the book. Well, other than some of the obvious stuff, but it is different.
I remember watching it as a kid with my father.
Oh yeah, Yeah, there were actually, depending on when you grew up, and maybe not depending on when you grew up, there are father-son bonding moments with movies, right? You can, my dad and I would watch old Clint Eastwood movies when I was growing up, and Logan's Run absolutely was a movie that fell into that category for us as well, where you see it on TV and you just throw the remote away, you're done for the night.
Yeah. Very, very cool. And everybody could get this book if you go to audibletrial.com/GFQ. You could sign up and get your free audiobook. I've actually been using it a lot. I was talking to Paul before the show. about what I just picked up. And, Paul and I both are World War II buffs, and I picked up The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and I believe it's a very, very long book.
It is literally 1,100 pages long.
Yeah, I know the book is long, but I'm looking here. It's 7 hours and 55 minutes unabridged.
Really?
Yeah.
Seems like it should be longer.
That's
than
actually really short.
Yeah,
wait a minute. No.
Is this part 1 of 13?
Part 1 of like 8.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
So this will be my summer book. I'll be.
I was going to say, you're not going to recommend a book for. The whole thing, by the way, is 57 hours and 13 minutes. It's as long as the war itself.
Let's see. Yeah, each part is about 7 hours. Actually, 57 hours, 13 minutes. You're right. 57 hours.
That's big.
That's a really big book, but it's an amazing book. I've never read it. I know Paul's read the book, and you're a fan of it.
Yep.
So I'm going to be doing that this summer. So this will be my pick for a while.
We're going to go to Normandy this summer.
Are you really?
Yeah.
When are you going?
First 3 weeks of August, roughly. Kind of the very end of July, and then the first 2.5 weeks of August.
Oh, very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, so I've never been, so we're going to go see the Normandy beaches and all that stuff.
I was just talking to like one of my friends' grandfathers. I guess it was a barbecue, and he was there, and he's a vet, and we was talking about Normandy, and I love sitting and listening to these stories, first-hand stories, and they all pretty much tell you the same thing. I was like 17 years old, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
And that's how every story begins when you hear about this. So it's extremely fascinating. But those are our Audible picks of the week. Paul, before we wrap it up, I have a 10-year game. Okay. I didn't put in the notes, but somebody brought up an interesting point. He sent us an email talking about how dumb our keyboards are.
Okay.
And if we think the keyboard will change over time, over the next 10 years, will the keyboard as we know it now be different? Will it evolve? And if not in the next 10 years, when will it evolve?
That's interesting. I mean, everyone probably knows the story about how the keyboard that we use today, it was designed to slow down the early typists because they were too quick for the mechanical keyboards of the day, right? Yeah. And that the more efficient Dvorak keyboard, the keyboard that no one ever uses, is supposedly much better for fast typing and so forth. But, we kind of use this thing. And the only big change I made for myself for keyboards is go with more ergonomic keyboards. And I found that actually helps with carpal tunnel type syndrome. But I think the future of this stuff is really going to be not typing in the same way that my kids today are not learning cursive. I think, did we have this conversation?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so cursive writing to them looks like hieroglyphics.
I learned. I had calligraphy when I was in school.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah,
and I used to have great handwriting. My handwriting is awful because I cramp up like within seconds now because I never write anything because I type so much. But I've always dreamt of I could be driving around. I guess I wouldn't do it on a plane, but you could be almost anywhere and you could dictate, a story. I mean, how amazing it would be if I could write my articles just by speaking. And I actually do think in the same way that, tablets replace computers, devices are just simpler and so forth. For a lot of people, maybe the speech stuff does make sense because most people don't have to type lots and lots of stuff. And so you can see it in stupid things like Siri or the voice control stuff in Connect, which actually works pretty well in the limited scenarios you would use that for. Maybe that could be a big part of it. I mean, maybe typing becomes an antiquated skill that people will kind of wonder, like, why do they type? Why do you do that? I don't understand, Obviously there needs to be better voice recognition, but that stuff's been going on for years and years.
Yeah, I know the Dvorak keyboard is far more efficient than the QWERTY keyboard.
Assuming you learned it. I mean,
assuming you learned it, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever done this, but you could do something like pick up a keyboard from Great Britain or France, right? Where they're not actually horribly off from the normal American style layout, but there's enough stuff off where you're typing and now you can't find I'd have to make it up, but the comma's gone or whatever it is, and that's hard enough. But going from the keyboard that you've spent years and years learning to a Dvorak layout would be, I don't think you could do it. I don't think I could do it. Is maybe the way I should say it. Not at this point.
Yeah, well, everything has become so standardized. Actually, one of the interesting things about the Dvorak keyboard,
makes sense or not.
It was because most of the typing on a QWERTY keyboard is done with the left hand. And on the QWERTY keyboard, most people are righties, so that's your weaker hand, so it's not as efficient. So then in the 1960s, the Dvorak keyboard actually is for the right hand, and the lefties were upset over it, so they made two versions, the left-handed keyboard and the right-handed keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
And when you do that, that's it. You're done. You're finished. It's interesting. I always found that fascinating. Will we be typing in 20 years?
I don't think most people will. I don't. They refer to this stuff as like natural user interface now because it's kind of different, but it's the touch stuff and the voice and some other things. But, eye control will be part of it. I mean, there's going to be all this stuff. So in the same way that there will always be people like me who need PCs, not devices, there will always be people like me who need to type. But maybe it won't be a lot of them, a lot of people. It'll just be the old timers. I mean,
yeah.
How weird it when you watch an old movie and someone uses a typewriter. It's
bizarre.
You notice it, right? It's weird. And I think maybe computers with keyboards will be viewed in the same antiquated fashion.
What's bizarre is that people were still using typewriters when I was in school. I remember typewriters.
Actually, the iPad might be the point at which this stuff changes. You can almost tell technology changeovers by the fact that the best-selling accessory for the new thing is the old thing, right? So, Apple got rid of the floppy drive with the iMac, but of course, the best-selling accessory for that first iMac was a floppy drive, external floppy drive. I'm not positive that the best-selling accessory for an iPad is a keyboard, but I bet a lot of people who buy iPads buy keyboards, and it shows that people want to make this change, but they're not quite ready to.
They're not ready.
Not quite yet, because the people who are buying iPads today have done other things. I mean. To the people who are babies today or the people to come in the future, they may not have that keyboard experience and they may not care about it. The glass keyboards will, be enough for the light typing they may have to do.
Kids are going to be typing on glass.
And I don't think they will be. I mean, I think that will be there as kind of a weird legacy thing, but maybe a lot of the time they'll just be talking to their computer.
Yeah, very interesting, Paul. Cool stuff. I thought this was interesting on the question that he asked, because
I'm never giving up my keyboard. I just want to be very clear about that.
I want the big, the punching ones, like on the old Tandies,
I always thought I would want those, like the IBM keyboards, the Lexmark. They still sell those. They make a mechanical clunk as you type.
I always liked it.
I've always been curious about that.
I have one upstairs, Zach. I haven't my old Tandy. I should fire that up next week on the show.
Jeez.
I should fire up.
I rely on the ergonomic keyboard.
Yeah, really cool stuff. All right, Paul. Time to wrap it up. You can check out Paul's website, winsupersite.com. Also, Paul does another podcast, really good podcast, Windows Weekly on the Twit Network every Thursday at 2 p.m. East. You can check that out. Also, if you miss any portion of this show, you can subscribe to it. We're on iTunes. We're on Zune. Everywhere you can imagine, and you could watch it on our website at gfknetwork.com or on WinSuperSite. Paul posts it within 24 hours or whenever I send it to him. But until next time, guys, take care, brush your hair.